So today's class, we're calling Facing the Consequences. Wait, hang on. Facing the consequences, and it will make sense as we start the class. Can you go to the next slide? So I'm going to introduce you to the gentleman on the left. 2008. You were a young man then. And that's my wife in the middle, who was just like, it was just a unique, very special human being. And this was actually at a dinner that we attended in 2008. And I think Lori won an award for that the two of you were part of, and so you took a photo with her. Irvin spent 52 years incarcerated, first at Graterford and then at Rockview, right up the road here. Was released 2 years ago and pardoned by the governor, and in part pardoned. It was in some ways an open and shut case, as the governor himself said, as well as Mr. Fetterman, who was kind of heading the committee. He was the lieutenant governor at the time. That people inside of the prison system have been trying to get Irvin out of prison for many years. I remember the superintendent in 2008. I was eating a piece of pie with him, the guy who was in charge, and he said, "That guy right there, we got to get him out of here. He needs to be out of here." And the more we interacted with Irvin, the more we realized what it was that all these people were seeing, the specialness of this person, this man who is now how old are you? 76 young.
76. It'll be 77 on my next birthday.
Dang, 76 years young. The more we met him and spent time with him, the more we realize this is a man who is a friend of everybody, and a man with a mission, and a man with a message, and a man who is just essentially, in the deepest sense of the word, a good human. Very special human. And so you all have the opportunity to meet him. And we're going to have a conversation. And when we get to the end, we'll open it up for a few questions and so on, and you can clearly speak with him afterwards. If he lives over behind the Wendy's there, you may have seen him and his dog. Anyway, my friend. This is Mr. Moore.
Can you hear me? With an introduction like that, I don't know what to say, but that's a lie, because I always have something to say to any and everyone that I meet. This is my 4th time being here at Source 119. Every time, I just sit here and look at these faces. I look out in the audience and I say, wow, look at these faces. There's no reason that you should come to this amphitheater, to this room, to this class, and not realize the blessings that are in your life. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Sam. I'm talking about what he brings to you. I'm talking about your interaction. I'm talking about utilizing this as a springboard for the rest of your life. I'm talking about dealing with life as if you know that life has consequences. Now, consequences don't always have to be bad. Consequences are the result of an interaction, a result of something happening.
All right, hang on. This is a nice jumping off point. I want to remind you, keep that close.
Okay.
As I remind everyone. Can you go to the next slide? So we're going to break this into 3 conversations. 3. It's good. It's good. We're going to break this into 3 conversations. And the first one is I'm going to call it morality and consequences.
Indeed.
So what I'd like you to do is I want to talk about morality, and I want you to think back to your childhood and your family. I'm going to start there. And what do you remember about learning about moral codes and right and wrong? What did you learn, and where did you learn it, and how did you learn it? And
Well, probably very similarly to any and everyone in here, I learned at a very, very early age the difference between right and wrong. We learn this when we're babies, in a fundamental way, right and wrong. Something that's good, something that's bad. I come from a 2-family home from Philadelphia. I tell people I was born and raised in Philadelphia, but ironically, I only spent 22 years of my life in Philadelphia before I was arrested for a crime that cost someone their life, and I was sentenced to life in prison. When this happened, I had immediate flashbacks to not what was going to occur to me for the rest of my life, but how this would impact my parents, my mother, my father. I felt so bad for them. I felt bad for the family of the victim. But I had been taught that there's a difference, a moral difference between right and wrong. And we learn these in so many ways. Sometimes we're young, as you are. And being young, we can be impulsive, which means what? We act before we actually think about cause and effect, yin and yang, the law of karma. You do this and something is going to result from that, or consequences. So yes, I was taught at a very early age what morality was, what goodness was.
So it's, hey. So tell us, so you took someone's life.
Yes.
How often do you think about him?
Every day. I think about him every day. I believe in God. I believe in that there is, even if whatever you want to call the designer of all of this. Those of you who study physics, you understand what that means. You go down to the micro level of something, and there is a universe there. You go to the macro level. You're astronomers and astrophysicists, and you recognize that there is a universe there. You think that just happened accidentally, as some people surmise. But I think in my heart of hearts that there's a designer to all of this. So, the designer and I have conversations every day. He knows me well because I have prayed and pleaded and begged him for his mercy for 52 years. Every day of my life since that event, I prayed to God to grant me mercy. And I prayed to God that he blessed the soul of the individual, the victim whose life I took. So I think about Mr. Granville Sawyer.
That was his name?
That was his name.
What? Say it again. What?
His name was Granville Sawyer. And he lived maybe a block and a half to 2 blocks from where I grew up and where I was living at the time. The incident, I wanted understood that I took a life without intending to. Because, I mean, intent matters, of course, but not in a court of law. Not in a court of law. And especially in Pennsylvania, where if you're found guilty of first or second degree homicide or murder, you're sentenced to life in prison. And life is, in Pennsylvania, is not like it is on television, where, well, you do 15 to life, 25 to life. You have a life sentence, but in 13 years you go in front of the parole board. Life in Pennsylvania is, by law, until you die. So, I was your age, or a little older than you are now, and I was 22 years old, standing in front of a judge. My mother and father and my brothers and sisters behind me, my family behind me. When the judge picks the gavel up and says, Erwin Moore, I sentence you to life in prison. My knees buckled, because I knew what that meant. Throughout that entire 52 years, I knew I was going to come home one day. I mean, I knew life was life, but I knew in my heart, I said, I didn't mean for this to happen. They were virtually saying, we want you to die here because you're a bad person, you're an evil person. You are a person who is unredeemable. And I did not believe that, knowing me, knowing the way I felt about life, the way I felt about people, the way I felt about the possibilities that exist in all of our lives, even mine's there. I didn't think I would die there, and that was part of my prayer every night, every day. Lord, please do not let me die here. And he did not.
So you had quite an interesting journey inside of prison.
Oh, I did.
The beginning, you were a kind of a rather rebellious young man.
I was a youngster.
Who was caught up and had a lot of anger, a lot of struggle.
And as I just mentioned to these young folk, impulsive, naive to a degree, ignorant to a large degree. But
something shifted. Can you tell the story? We'd have to do it fairly briefly, but the story of when you got hold of man's search for meaning.
Oh.
That seemed like an important turning point.
It is. That was a very important point in my journey. And I think it's one that any and everyone in this room can relate to, because you're already on that journey. Mm-hmm. I never went to high school. I went to the 9th grade and dropped out because I thought I knew everything there was to know. So, in those days, coming from Philadelphia, where there was a lot of what you call gang banging today, we call gang warring. We warred against one another, different neighborhoods. And the high school that they wanted to send me to was in the neighborhood of a rival gang. I said, I'm not going. I am not going. And I convinced my mother and father to sign me out of school, and I would do something I would do something else. Oh boy, one of the worst mistakes I made in my life, because I did not understand the value of what you guys are undergoing right now, the value of education, what that means. You've all heard the saying that knowledge is power. Well, that's no joke. That is no joke. And me, the young, big-headed individual who thought he knew everything, began to realize I knew virtually nothing. Nothing.
All right, so you're in for a number of years, and the old heads, which you call like the old timers, which you were before you got out. You're still an old head. But so the old heads are the guys who are
They
locked
run the
up.
joint.
They
The
run.
old
They run
heads-
everything.
The old heads run the joint.
So, like the prison, when you have this building, this space with all of these people packed together, there's no way that thing is going to stay calm without the old heads, the prisoners themselves,
There
saying
is-
like being in control. Yeah.
There's a hierarchy, like in any society. I don't care what that society may be. There's a hierarchy. There is a top, middle, bottom level.
All right.
And me coming through as a youngster, brand new with a life sentence, all the swag in the world running around, I was on the bottom level.
But you thought you were on the top level.
I thought I was on the top level when I was in the street. Once I got into this environment, I recognized and realized that there's a whole lot you don't know, boy.
All right, so you're in for a while, you're trying to find your space, and these old heads give you a book.
Well, before they give me the book, the old heads, what they would do, this was the days before school inside. This was what I call the Shawshank Redemption days. Imagine being in an environment like this, you guys, with no cell phone, with no laptop, with no radio, with no TV, no electronics whatsoever, no means of communication. They didn't even have newspapers and periodicals and no magazines. Imagine. And this is every day.
So you're literally just in cages. I mean,
So
just,
we had to revert and resort to the power of the word. We had to revert and resort to what has been with us since time out of mind, when the only means of transferring knowledge and history and events was by the griot, or the storyteller, or the elders, or the wise men, where we would sit at the feet of the wise men before we set out to do anything. We want to found a new village. I want to get married. We're going to war with the neighboring village. There's trouble, and we sat at the feet of the elders. Why? Because they were the wise ones. They knew. They had gone through everything that we had not. Your mothers, your fathers, your grandmothers, whenever I talk to a crowd, especially a crowd of young folk like you, I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I always admonish you and ask you, talk to some of the old people in your life. If you have grandmothers or grandfathers, call them up or stop over and go see them. And if you don't have that, the elders in your family. If you don't have that, the elders on the street where you live. If you don't have that, the elders that you see in your neighborhood. Stop them and say, how are you? How are you feeling? Do you have anything to tell me? Because they all have stories to tell, and we have relegated them to the abyss. We don't even listen to them anymore, and we all need to. So, the elders in the penitentiary were my old heads, and they would stand in a circle and talk, sharing knowledge amongst one another. And the young guys just running around hither and there. And I felt this. I felt that this was something important. And I would hang around the periphery and just listen. They look at me, I'd look this way. But I would listen to the conversation. And they talked about some of everything. Subjects and topics that I had no idea of. But now I'm learning. And one day they said, look, once we had started getting books in there, these things had started to change a bit. And he called me one day, and this is the old head that was from around my neighborhood, so he knew me. Irvin, come here. He'd been hanging around the periphery of this group for a month. What do you want? I said, I don't know. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to, he said, I'm going to give you this book. I want you to take it up to your cell and read this. You don't have to read it now, but read it, and when you come back, then we'll talk about it and see what you learn, see if you learn anything about it. I said, okay. And I knew that this was a key. This was a key to entrance into this circle. I said, oh, all right now. I got the book, ran up to my cell, and threw it in the corner and said, man, you know, I don't need to read that. I don't know what I need to read that for. Next day, I grabbed the book, I go back down to the circle, I said, here you go. He said, you read that? I said, yeah. He said, how you like it? I said, it was good. It's all right. He looked at me, I saw that little glint in his eye. He says, okay, what do you think about the central character, the protagonist? I didn't understand what that word meant. I said, who? He said, come here. And the thing about our old heads back in the day was that they could all fight. Every one of them knew how to fight. That was before the days of picking up a weapon and running up and down the street shooting people. These guys could all box and knew how to do this well. I went to the gym myself, but these guys were good. And we had respect for them for a number of reasons, but primarily because we knew they could kick our butts. He said, come here. I said, hey, man. He said, take this book, take it upstairs. Don't do this again. Read that book. Or don't. I took it upstairs and I'm stomping like this. I'm going on. You know how we do. You know how you do when you're a kid. And I went in my cell and sat down. I opened it. I said, all right. One thing about the penitentiary in those days, they turned the lights off in your cell at 12 midnight. Because there was no radio, there was no TV, there was no need for electricity. So the lights went off at 12 midnight. So, at 12, now I went upstairs with the book around 4 o'clock, 4 or 5. At 12 midnight, the lights went off, and I eased to the door so I could catch some of the rays of the lights that are coming from the corridor as I sat down and just read in fascination. Read in fascination as in terms of what words could do. I said, how is this possible? I was fascinated. Next morning, I finished the book. I finished the book that night, sleepy, as I am now, because I stayed up all night last night as well, taking care of some business. I have no problem doing that. So I walked down, gave him the book back, and stood right there. And he says, okay, what do you think about it? And I gave him a brief synopsis of what I thought the author intended. He looked at me, nodded, smiled, and says, you read it? I said, I did. He told the other old heads, I let him in there. And I had a spot in the circle. The book was called Man's Search for Meaning. If you have not read that, you need to. The author's name was Viktor Frankl. He was a logotherapist. He was also a concentration camp victim from the days of World War II, the Nazi Germany. And what the book was about was my life. Virtually, I mean, here we're in Poland, we're in Germany, we're in concentration camps, and I'm in the United States, but the similarities were so blatant. I mean, my heart just, there are passages in the book I knew what he meant, and I knew what he was going to say, and I knew the result and the consequence of the actions that took place in the book. I just said, Lord, he's talking about me. He's talking about my life. He's talking about what's possible. And again, that was the beginning of my journey into higher education, into education period, into learning, into realizing that there is a universe of information and knowledge that surrounds us, that we have a responsibility to seek and to attempt to obtain, and in so doing, share that gift with someone else. So inside, I became a teacher. I became one of the guys who got guys together and said, come on, y'all, come here, sit down. What do you know about this philosophy? What do you know about mathematics? What do you know about history? What do you know about civics, physics? What do you know about astronomy? I tried to learn everything there was to learn so that I could then give this to the brothers that are around me. Because one thing that I began to realize in that environment is that there are a lot of people inside who don't need to be there and only need a chance to learn that they can do and be better.
Hey, so that's a nice jumping off point for the next conversation, next things I want to talk about. But first, let me just summarize. So you're this person who in the most dire of circumstances, when one would imagine that your life was gone, you'd thrown it away, it was gone, you had nothing to live for, you found what you could live for, which was the journey of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. And then you took that journey, and you took the journey in the most unlikely of places. And which is, for me, so fascinating, because I started that journey when I was 2.5 years into my undergraduate career, sitting not in a class this size, in a much smaller class, and just one day I decided I just didn't want to be ignorant anymore. Like, I wanted to understand the world, which is very much what happened to you. So, can you go to the next slide? So, one of the themes in class, given this is a sociology class, is trying to decipher the degree to which we are who we are, and we follow the path that we follow. Dude, gentlemen. We follow the path that we follow because of decisions we make and because of factors and forces outside of our control. So we don't control who our parents are. We don't control who the people are around us, the neighborhood we grow up in, the country in which we have citizenship, the era, the skills that we can follow with our bodies. We control decisions we make. But even those decisions are made within the context of factors and forces that we don't control. You grew up in North Philly. Indeed. I grew up in Toledo. We had very different contexts within which we were making those personal decisions. And so one of the things in this class that I am always trying to balance is the ways in which our decision-making and factors and forces outside of our control come together always and lead us to where we are at any one moment. And that we're never 100% responsible for anything, because we can't control everything, and yet, of course, we are, because we have no other choice but to see ourselves as 100% responsible. So for you, I just want to walk into this a little bit, how you got to this place of making some of the bad decisions, because it didn't start with this crime that you committed. I mean, you started committing crimes at a much younger age, right? So bad decisions, limiting circumstances. Can we tell the story of your birthday? This seemed like this was like a jumping off point, right? Your birthday money. Can you tell that story? Because this is a really powerful story. So how old were you?
It was 13.
So 13. Imagine a 13-year-old boy. Just a nice kid, right? Were you like a bad boy before that?
Oh, I mean, not really.
Not really, okay.
I was still innocent
Got
to a large degree. I was still innocent. And in my neighborhood, in quite a few neighborhoods, when a young boy, turns 13 years of age, it's almost like a rite of passage that he has to go through. And I had a birthday party, the first one I had in my life, and the last one for the next 52 years.
Hang on. The first cake you had, and the last birthday party you ever had, until until we threw a party together.
Until the party that you guys threw for me, which was my 75th birthday party. I hadn't had a party since I was 13 years old.
All right.
That's of minor consequence. 13 years old. I left the birthday party. I had a good time. I had my friends, and we were going to head out to the park. And then we were going to, just walk out to the park. It's maybe a mile away. Again, I'm from Philadelphia. There's not a whole lot of parks around. It's concrete, still asphalt. And you have to walk a little distance to see some green and grass and what have you. So we were going out to the park. On the way, and I had received a little birthday money, especially as a gift from my father. In those days, $20 was a lot of money for a 13-year-old kid. Nothing today, but I had $20 in my birthday card, and I took and put it in my back pocket, and I had a button on my back pocket, and I closed that button, make sure it didn't fall out. I said, let's go, y'all. Let's go to the park. We got about maybe 3 or 4 blocks away, and the police pulled up beside us on a squad car. Oh, where you guys? Where you going? What you doing? So, we're not doing anything. We're going to the park, sir. 13 years old. I was still innocent. I believed in justice. I always believed in right and wrong, but I leaned more on the side of right in those days, deliberately. Police said, get up against the wall, all y'all. I said, no, we're not doing it. Get up against the wall. So he patted us down. There's 2 of them. One guy, there's about 7, 8 of us. One guy at one end, another guy at the other end, patting us down. When they got to me, and I didn't have anything except for what I had in my back pocket. He said, what's that? I said, oh, that's nothing. You just turn around. I turned around. So I just said, well, let's get this to myself. I said, let's hurry up and get this over so we can get to the park. He opened that and took my card out. I said, I just had a birthday. That's my birthday card. And he said, all right, turn around. And I heard him open it. And then he took and put it back in my pocket. I said, okay, everything's good. So he says, all right, now you get your asses out of here and don't get in no trouble. And we started walking. I said, and my money was gone. I said, wait a minute. The police. This can't be right. I mean, my little mind, my little heart, my little brain, my little world says there's something wrong. The police. I said, you took my money. He said, and I saw the look in his eye when he looked back at me. He said, give me my money. I was a kid. He said, and he used racial slurs and curse words and told me, get the. I said, I'm going to tell my father. First and foremost, I could not believe that this happened. A police officer took my money. A police officer robbed me. They're not supposed to do that. They're the good guys. They help us. That's when I realized that the world was slightly different
So,
than I had been led to believe.
so you went home and told your dad,
I went home and told my father.
and what did he say?
My father, who I thought was Superman up until that point, could do anything, could do no wrong. I listened to every word, hung on to every word that he said. And if there was something wrong happening in the family or with me, he took care of it. He told me to shut up and leave that alone. I said, ain't you going to? He said, boy, get in there. And I saw a look in his face, in his eyes. Shame. Knowledge that I had reached a point where I was no longer a baby, his baby. And something had happened in the world that he could not fix. Because he understood the real world. I didn't, not up until that point. I'm just getting a taste of it. Said, oh, shit, is this what life is about?
Like injustice.
Oh,
Injustice. So now you've got, so there's nothing, when I think about your journey and your stories, of which, you know, we've had many conversations, and the thing that I'm often left with is this idea that tiny moments like that can really open doorways to changing the way you walk through the world.
it's very seldom anything major and anticlimactic or something dramatic. Quite often, it's usually the little things that tend to accumulate, little things that tend to happen in our lives that years later we remember. Or even at that moment that they're happening, they tend to nudge us toward a different way, and we don't even realize it. I remember, well, growing up, I developed a stutter when I was maybe close to that age. I developed a stutter that was a horrible stutter. I couldn't get 2 words out of my mouth. But, and I'm not saying this to make fun of anyone, because that was me. And I had something that I wanted to say, and I wanted to say it so bad that I couldn't control how it came out. And the response that I often got from people around me was ridicule. You know, especially other kids. Kids can be mean, and they laughed. Remember, I'm from Philadelphia, and we went to the gym at an early age. We learned how to box, and I didn't have any problem jumping into their mouth. I didn't have any problem. Said, okay, come on, you laughing? And that began to happen again, and again, and again, and again, until I began to develop a reputation in my neighborhood of being a bad boy. Always fighting, always punching somebody, always hurting somebody, always chasing some guys. Now, nobody was laughing at me, but they were. So, when I remember one night going over to my friend's house. His name was Greg. He lived down the street. I had a train set. He had train tracks, and he had the cars that go with it. I had the locomotive. So I took my little locomotive. I'm going to his house to play with the trains with him. And his mother told, when I came to the door, "Who's that at the door?" He said, "Oh, it's Irvin." She said, "Don't let him in here." And I could hear this. He said, "Mom, what is it? Don't let that bad boy in here, and you don't you play with him." I backed down the steps. And wow. And that happened again when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And I'll be 77 years old soon, and I remember that like it was yesterday, the impact of that in my life. And my response to that, being a kid, being unable to analyze the situation, I said, okay, you think I'm bad? You ain't seen nothing. I said, you ain't seen, y'all ain't seen nothing. And I became the bad boy in my neighborhood. Even when I knew I didn't want to, even though when I knew I didn't have to.
Man,
There was a role that I felt I had to play now.
yeah.
And I was gonna play this role to the hilt.
And that is like, man, that is like the I talk about in this class, like these invisible strings that just come down and they connect to all of us,
yes.
and they shape us in these ways that you were, on one hand you're making a choice, but your choice is like the options are there few options. Like you just get pulled down a path, right?
Yes. Not only that, it's self-destructive. And when you're that young, you don't realize that.
Yeah.
You think you're invincible. You think
Now
you're
listen, man, just like, dude, just like students in this class, just like students at Penn State, so many students, like, just like cheating. You want to cheat. You want to figure out how can I get my attendance points without coming to class? Can I get my attendance points and then sneak out of class because I think I have something else that's important to do? Like, how can I do this? How can I cheat on the quiz? We got a quiz coming up. Like, how can I make that happen? And like, no one sees it as particularly problematic because it's happening all around us. But every time we, hey, wait, can you, but every time it's just like, it just takes us into this place where we're just throwing away these opportunities to be like, when you see 52 years, my friend, 52 years, right? It's like, if people could understand what 52 years is, we're going to go in a different direction in a second, but can you just take a minute and explain what 52 years incarcerated is?
I was talking to a young person today while I was waiting on you, and he was telling me about, Wendy's. You know, they built the Wendy's maybe 40, 50 yards from where I live. Wendy's. I didn't know anything about Wendy's. I stopped in there, and I have to watch myself because I've been going in there a little too often. And he said, Wendy's? He said, no, man. He said, Burger King. I said, I've never been there. He said, what you mean you've never been to Burger King? He said,